I read it 3 times before my hands started shaking. The diary was open on my kitchen table, left there with what I would later understand was deliberate carelessness. The handwriting was precise, almost elegant, the kind of penmanship that speaks of expensive private schools and careful cultivation. I had been reaching for my coffee mug when the words caught my eye. My name. My son's name. Numbers. I should have closed it immediately, should have respected privacy, should have walked away. Instead, I read, Michael is easy enough to manage. Once we're married, his mother's pharmaceutical company inheritance will be accessible through him. Conservative estimate, 3.7 million liquid assets, plus the Rittenhouse Square property. 2 years maximum, then divorce. He'll be too humiliated to fight it. My son's name in her handwriting. My money in her calculations. My home reduced to a line item in someone else's business plan. The coffee mug slipped from my fingers. I watched it fall, watched it shatter against the tile floor I had chosen when we renovated this kitchen 18 years ago. Watched the dark liquid spread across cream-colored grout. The sound seemed to come from very far away. You know that feeling when the floor disappears beneath you? When your lungs forget how to pull in air and your vision narrows to a single point? I stood there in my kitchen, the same kitchen where I had taught Michael to make fresh pasta when he was 7 years old, where we had celebrated his acceptance to Penn, where he had told me just 8 weeks ago that he had found the one, and felt reality rearrange itself into something unrecognizable. The sunlight streaming through the window seemed too bright suddenly, too cheerful for what I had just discovered. Outside, I could hear children playing in the park across the street, their laughter a cruel counterpoint to the collapse happening inside my chest. My neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, was trimming her rose bushes, humming something tuneless. The world continued as if nothing had changed, as if I had not just watched my son's future incinerate in elegant cursive script. I gripped the edge of the counter, my knuckles white. The marble was cold beneath my palms. Solid, real. I focused on that sensation because everything else felt like it was dissolving. 24 years as a pediatrician had taught me to stay calm in crises, to compartmentalize, to think clearly when parents were panicking and children were screaming. But this was different. This was my child, my only child, and someone was hunting him. Her name was Vanessa Cole, 29 years old, marketing consultant, effortlessly beautiful in that calculated way where every detail appears natural but costs a fortune to maintain. Honey blonde hair that caught light perfectly, a wardrobe of understated designer pieces that whispered wealth rather than shouted it. Skin that glowed with the kind of health that comes from expensive facials and strategic supplements. Michael had met her at a networking event in Center City 6 months earlier. He had been dazzled immediately. I remembered our first meeting with painful clarity now. She had arrived at my home on a Sunday afternoon with a bottle of wine that cost exactly enough to seem thoughtful without being excessive. She had complimented my garden, the climbing roses along the back fence that my late husband had planted. She had asked intelligent questions about Thomas's work in pharmaceutical research, nodding thoughtfully at my answers. She had laughed at Michael's jokes with perfect timing, touching his arm in ways that seemed spontaneous but never excessive. I had thought, finally, someone worthy of my son. What a fool I had been. What a blind, trusting fool. I remembered how she had walked through my home that first day, her eyes taking in every detail. The original crown molding, the chandelier Thomas and I had found at an estate sale, the family photographs lining the hallway. At the time, I had interpreted her attention as appreciation for history, for the warmth of a lived-in home. Now I saw it for what it was. Inventory. She had been appraising my possessions the way an auctioneer examines lot items before a sale, and I had smiled and offered her more wine. The poisonous phrase sat on the page like a snake coiled in sunshine, easy enough to manage. That was what my brilliant, kind, accomplished son was to her. Manageable. A means to an end. A key to a vault. I stood there with broken ceramic at my feet and felt something crack inside my chest. The kind of break that happens when you realize you have been watching a performance and mistaking it for reality. When you understand that someone has been studying your family the way a burglar studies a house, noting weak points and entry strategies. My hands were shaking so badly I had to grip the counter to steady myself. The marble was cool beneath my palms. I focused on that sensation, using it to anchor myself to the present moment, to keep from screaming. Because screaming would not help. Confronting her immediately would not help. Running to Michael with accusations would not help. I knew my son, knew how he loved, completely, trustingly, with his whole heart. He had been that way since childhood, forming deep attachments, believing in people's goodness. It was one of the things I loved most about him. It was also his greatest vulnerability. When Michael was 9, he had befriended a boy at school who was stealing lunch money from other children. Michael had noticed the boy never had food, had started sharing his own lunch, had invited him over to play. When the theft was discovered and the boy was expelled, Michael had cried for 3 days. But he is hungry, Mom. He needed help, not punishment. That capacity for empathy, for seeing the best in people even when evidence suggested otherwise, had shaped him into the compassionate man he had become. It was also what made him perfect prey for someone like Vanessa. If I went to him now, hysterical and emotional, waving this diary like evidence in a trial, what would happen? Vanessa would claim I had misunderstood, that it was fiction, creative writing, a character study for a novel, that I was jealous of losing my son to another woman, that I was a controlling mother who could not accept his happiness. And Michael, in love and defended against reason, would believe her. Because that is what love does. It builds walls around the beloved, fortifications against attack. Even when the attack is truth. No. I needed more than a diary entry. I needed a case. But first, I needed to understand what I had missed, how I had been so thoroughly deceived. I made myself move, stepping carefully around the broken mug, retrieved my phone from the counter, took photographs of the diary pages, hands still trembling. The camera struggled to focus at first because my hands were shaking so badly. I had to brace my elbows against the table, had to take 3 deep breaths before I could steady myself enough to capture clear images. Each click of the shutter felt like documenting a crime scene, which, I suppose, it was. Then I closed the journal and placed it exactly where I had found it, angled the same way. If she had left it deliberately, she would know if it had been moved. I measured the distance from the table edge with my fingers, memorized the way the pen lay beside it, noted the slight crease in the page where it had been folded open. Every detail mattered. I could not let her know I had discovered her plan. Not yet. Then I sat at the table and forced myself to think. The diary entry had triggered something. A cascade of memories I had filed away as insignificant. Small moments that suddenly formed a damning pattern. 3 months ago, at Sunday dinner, Vanessa had steered conversation toward my finances with surgical precision. We had been talking about the cherry blossoms in Fairmount Park when she had pivoted smoothly. Michael mentioned you sold your share of the practice last year. That must have been such a relief, having everything settled. Her eyes had been so sympathetic, so interested. Such a weight off your shoulders. I had appreciated her concern then. Thought it showed emotional intelligence, an understanding that the sale of my pediatric practice had been bittersweet, an ending to a career I had loved but could no longer maintain after Thomas died. Now I saw the calculator behind her smile, the subtle probe for information, the confirmation that yes, I had liquid assets. The practice had sold for $2.4 million. She would have filed that number away, added it to her growing portfolio of intelligence about the Brennan family finances. I remembered how smoothly she had moved the conversation forward after extracting that information, asking about my plans for retirement, whether I intended to travel. Where are you thinking of going? Europe? Asia? She had seemed so interested in my dreams, my future. But she had really been calculating how much of that $2.4 million I might spend before dying, how much would be left for Michael to inherit, for her to claim. 6 weeks ago, she had asked about the Rittenhouse Square townhouse almost casually. We had been having coffee in my living room, spring light streaming through the tall windows. "Have you thought about what happens to this place eventually?" It must be so much space for one person. Michael had laughed uncomfortably and changed the subject, but she had gotten her answer from his discomfort. Yes, it would be his someday. This 4-story townhouse in one of Philadelphia's most desirable neighborhoods. The home Thomas and I had bought 30 years ago for $300,000, and that was now worth over $2 million, which meant it would be hers. I remembered the way her eyes had traveled over the room after that question, taking in the high ceilings, the original hardwood floors, the view of the square through the tall windows. She had not been admiring the architecture. She had been calculating square footage, estimating property value, planning her future. 2 weeks ago, at the venue tasting for their October wedding, she had insisted on the Union League package, $47,000 for 150 guests. The coordinator had walked us through the details: champagne reception, 7-course dinner, orchestra, floral installations. When I had gently suggested a beautiful but less extravagant option, one of the other venues we had toured, she had touched my arm and said, "You only get one wedding, right? And Michael says you want us to start our marriage without financial stress, using my own generosity as permission to spend my money, weaponizing my love for my son against me." I had been so pleased that Michael had shared my wishes with her, had felt touched that he understood my desire to help them begin their life together on solid footing. I had not realized he was being manipulated, that she was coaching those very words from him, planting ideas about my generosity and then harvesting them for her own benefit. Every memory confirmed what the diary had crystallized. This was not romance. It was a business plan. And my son was the product she was purchasing with his own inheritance. I sat at the kitchen table as afternoon light slanted through the windows and felt something harden inside me. A core of steel forming where soft maternal worry had been. I have spent 52 years being reasonable, being kind, giving people the benefit of the doubt. I had been a pediatrician for 24 years before my husband's death, and I had learned that sometimes love means making decisions that feel cruel in the moment, but protect people from greater harm. Sometimes you have to set a broken bone, and the child screams, and the parents cry, but you do it anyway because improper healing causes permanent damage. My son was about to marry a predator, and I was done being polite. I started the next morning. I had barely slept, lying awake in the darkness of my bedroom, replaying every interaction with Vanessa, cataloging every red flag I had dismissed. At 5:30, I gave up on sleep, showered, dressed in the navy suit I wore for medical consultations, and made myself breakfast I could not taste. The eggs sat on my plate, congealing. The toast grew cold. I forced myself to eat anyway, mechanically, knowing I would need energy for what was coming. The coffee helped, strong and black, bitter enough to cut through the numbness. I sat at my kitchen table, the same table where the diary had been, and made lists. What I knew, what I needed to know, what I needed to prove. Then I called a private investigator. Her name was Rita Chen. I had gotten her contact information from a friend whose family had needed help during a custody dispute. Rita had been thorough, professional, and most importantly, discreet. I needed someone who would not talk, would not leave digital footprints that Vanessa might discover. We met at a coffee shop in Queen Village, far enough from Rittenhouse Square that I would not encounter anyone I knew. Rita was in her early 40s, sharp-eyed, dressed in jeans and a blazer. She ordered black coffee and took notes on a tablet while I explained the situation. She listened without interrupting, her expression neutral. When I finished, she set down her stylus and looked at me directly. You understand that what I find might not be what you want to hear. Sometimes people are exactly who they appear to be. Sometimes the suspicious mother is wrong. I understand, I said. But I do not think I am wrong. Neither do I, Rita said quietly. The patterns you are describing, the financial probing, the quick engagement, the expensive wedding funded by family, these are classic markers. But we need evidence, court-quality documentation. Are you prepared for what that might cost? I did not hesitate. Whatever it takes. I need everything, I told her. Financial history, past relationships, employment verification, social media going back years. I need to know who she actually is. Rita had not seemed surprised. I see this more than you would think, she said. People who target wealth. They are getting more sophisticated, better at hiding their tracks, but everyone leaves a trail. Give me 10 days. I gave her Vanessa's full name, date of birth, the name of her supposed marketing consulting firm. Everything I knew, which I realized was painfully little. My son was planning to marry this woman in 4 months, and I could not have told you where she grew up or the names of her parents. That is part of their technique, Rita explained. They keep their past vague. Difficult childhood they do not like to discuss. Family estrangement that explains why there is no one to meet. It creates mystery while preventing verification. Has she introduced Michael to any childhood friends? Any family members? I thought about it. Realized the answer was no. She had mentioned a sister in California they had never met. Parents who had passed away, conveniently eliminating the possibility of investigation. A childhood in Connecticut at boarding schools, which explained the lack of hometown connections. Every answer she had given created isolation, prevented fact-checking. And we had accepted it all because it seemed plausible, because we wanted to be understanding, because questioning grief and loss felt cruel. Rita made notes. I will start with the basics: birth records, education history, employment verification. Then I will expand from there. If she has done this before, there will be traces. Credit applications, court records, civil suits. People like this leave patterns. She paused, then added, You should prepare yourself for your son's reaction. When you bring him this information, he will be hurt, angry. He may direct that anger at you. I know, I said, but I would rather have him angry at me and safe than happy and destroyed. Rita nodded. That is what a good mother does, even when it costs her everything. The next week was the longest of my life. I maintained normalcy, smiled at Sunday dinner, discussed wedding plans, watched Vanessa perform her role as devoted fiancée, and felt my stomach turn. But I gave nothing away. I have spent decades managing a pediatric practice, dealing with difficult parents, delivering bad diagnoses. I know how to control my face. That Sunday dinner was particularly excruciating. Vanessa arrived with sample invitations for us to review, thick cream cardstock with raised lettering. She spread them across my dining room table, discussing fonts and wording with apparent enthusiasm. Michael and Vanessa Brennan request the honor of your presence. She practiced saying it aloud, testing how the names sounded together. I like how it flows. Brennan. It is a strong name. A valuable name, I thought. A name with assets attached. Michael was beaming, his arm around her shoulders, completely oblivious to the calculation in her eyes as she examined the invitations. She caught me watching and smiled warmly. What do you think? The classic style or the modern? I forced myself to engage, to discuss paperweight and envelope linings, to play the role of excited future mother-in-law, all while knowing that in a few days I would have the evidence to destroy her. The duplicity was exhausting. I excused myself twice during dinner, once to check on the roast that did not need checking, once to retrieve a forgotten serving dish that was not forgotten. I stood in my kitchen, gripping the counter, forcing myself to breathe. reminding myself that the performance was temporary. Soon, the truth would come out. Michael noticed something was off. "Mom, you seem distracted," he said one evening. "Are you feeling okay?" "Just tired, sweetheart. I have not been sleeping well." It was not a lie. I was awake most nights, mind racing, reviewing everything I knew, preparing for what was coming. The explosion, the accusations, Michael's rage at my interference. I would lie in bed, Thomas's side still empty after 3 years, and run through scenarios. What if Rita found nothing? What if Vanessa was exactly who she claimed to be, and I was a paranoid mother destroying my relationship with my son over a misunderstood diary entry? What if I was wrong? But then I would remember the way she had asked about money, the precision of it, the calculated interest, and I knew I was not wrong. On night 6, I could not sleep at all. I went downstairs at 2 a.m, made chamomile tea I did not drink, sat in my darkened living room watching the square through the window. A few couples walked past, hand in hand, laughing. A taxi dropped off late-night revelers. The city lived and breathed around me while I waited for evidence that would either vindicate my instincts or reveal me as the villain in my son's love story. I thought about Thomas, wished desperately that he was still alive, that I could talk through this with him. He had always been the rational one, the one who could see through people's facades. He would have known what to do. Or would he? Would he have been charmed by Vanessa too? She was good. Very good. Maybe even Thomas would have missed the signs. On day 9, Rita called. "I have what you need. Can you come to my office?" Her office was in a converted warehouse in Fishtown, small and functional. She handed me a folder, thick with printed documents. "I am sorry," she said quietly. "I wish I had better news." I opened the folder and started reading. Vanessa Cole had been engaged twice before, both times to men significantly older and wealthier than Michael. Both engagements had ended badly. The first was to a venture capitalist in Boston named David Rothenberg. He was 62, recently widowed, worth approximately $40 million. They met at a charity gala. Were engaged within 4 months. The engagement ended when his daughter, suspicious of the whirlwind romance, hired her own investigator and discovered Vanessa had taken out credit cards in David's name. 3 cards, total limit of $75,000, maxed out in 6 weeks. I stared at the documentation Rita had obtained, credit card statements showing purchases at Bergdorf Goodman, Cartier, a luxury car dealership. Vanessa had not even tried to hide the spending. She had simply assumed David would not check, would not notice, would be too smitten to question where the new wardrobe and jewelry had come from. No charges were filed. David had paid the debt and paid Vanessa $50,000 to disappear quietly. Rita had found the settlement agreement. It included a non-disclosure clause, which explained why Michael's background check, the basic online search most people do before getting serious, had revealed nothing. The second engagement was to a real estate developer named Marcus Hyland, also in Boston, 56 years old. They met at a networking event, were engaged within 3 months. This relationship collapsed 3 weeks before the wedding when Marcus found emails Vanessa had sent to a friend. Rita had obtained copies. I read them with mounting nausea. 1 year of playing devoted wife, 2 at most, then I am free and clear. He is so desperate for companionship he will agree to anything in the prenup. His lawyer thinks I am being reasonable. Idiot. The words could have come straight from the diary I had found. The same cold calculation, the same contempt for the man who loved her, the same assumption that wealth plus loneliness equaled vulnerability. Marcus had called off the wedding. Vanessa had threatened to sue for breach of promise. He had settled for $25,000 to avoid publicity, $75,000 from David, $25,000 from Marcus, plus whatever smaller amounts she had extracted during the relationships. Vanessa had made over $100,000 from these men without ever making it to an altar. And now she was aiming for my son, her most ambitious target yet. She had moved from Boston to Philadelphia 18 months ago. Right after the second broken engagement made her too recognizable in her previous city. Right after burning through two wealthy men's goodwill and needing fresh hunting grounds. Rita had more. Financial records obtained through legal database searches. Vanessa did not have a marketing consulting business. She had an LLC registered in Delaware, Vanessa Cole Consulting, with no clients, no revenue, no business activity. It was a shell, a prop to make her seem professionally successful. The Delaware registration was clever, Rita explained. Minimal filing requirements, maximum privacy. She could claim to have a business, could put it on her social media, could use it to explain her flexible schedule, but there is no substance, no tax returns showing income, no business bank account, no clients who could be contacted for references. Her actual income for the past 2 years, $18,000. Mostly from loans from men she had dated briefly, loans that were never repaid, small amounts, $3,000 here, $5,000 there. Not enough to trigger legal action, but enough to sustain her while she searched for the next mark. She had student loans in default, $42,000 owed to 3 different lenders. Credit cards maxed out and sent to collections. A eviction on her record from an apartment in Back Bay, Boston. She had left owing 4 months' rent. I sat in Rita's office and felt the full weight of what my son had narrowly avoided. This was not just a gold digger. This was a professional. Someone who had refined her technique through multiple attempts, who had learned from her mistakes, gotten better at concealment, and she had chosen my son because he was perfect, young enough to be trusting, successful enough to be worth the effort, and with a mother who had money she could not access directly but could reach through him once they were married. I thought about the men who had come before Michael. David, grieving his wife, vulnerable and lonely. Marcus, divorced and eager to start fresh. And now Michael, young and in love for the first time in his adult life. She had studied the art of identifying emotional vulnerability, of finding the cracks where manipulation could take root. I am putting together a full report, Rita said. Everything documented with sources, court records, financial statements, emails. You will have everything you need. I need one more thing, I told her. I need to know if there are others. Other men she has dated since moving to Philadelphia. Other attempts before she settled on Michael. Rita made notes. Give me 3 more days. Those 3 days, I prepared myself for what was coming. Not just gathering evidence, but preparing emotionally for the explosion this would cause. For the pain I would inflict on my son even as I saved him. I called my sister in Pittsburgh. Told her everything. Needed someone who would remind me I was not crazy when Vanessa inevitably tried to paint me as the villain. My sister Ellen had been skeptical at first. You are sure you are not overreacting? She asked. Young couples ask about finances. It does not necessarily mean malice. Then I sent her the photos of the diary entry, the credit card fraud documentation from David, the emails to Marcus. She called back within an hour, her voice shaken. Oh my God. This is worse than I thought. When are you telling Michael? Soon, I said. I need to get all the evidence first. I need to make it undeniable. Ellen was quiet for a moment. Then she said, You know he is going to be devastated. He really loves her. I know. But loving someone who does not exist is worse than the pain of discovering the truth. I called my closest friend from medical school, now retired in Maine, talked through my strategy. She had seen similar situations, families torn apart by financial predators. Trust your instincts, she told me. If something feels wrong, it is wrong. Dr. Margaret Walsh had been my mentor in residency, had guided me through the hardest years of my medical training. She had a gift for cutting through noise to reach truth. I need you to be honest with me, I said. Is there any possibility I am seeing patterns that do not exist? That I am being an overprotective mother? Margaret did not hesitate. You are one of the most rational people I know. You spent 2 decades diagnosing illness in children where the margin for error was life or death. You do not jump to conclusions. If your instincts are screaming, listen to them. The worst that happens if you are wrong is temporary embarrassment. The worst that happens if you are right and do nothing is permanent damage to your son. Those words steadied me. The risk of action versus the risk of inaction. I had made that calculation hundreds of times in my medical career. The scales were clear. I called my therapist, Dr. Sarah Lynn, whom I had seen periodically since Thomas died, made an emergency appointment, sat in her office and cried for the first time since finding the diary. I feel like I am destroying my son's happiness, I told her. Dr. Lynn leaned forward in her chair. You are not taking something from Michael. You are preventing someone from stealing what he does not even know he has. His ability to trust his own judgment. His belief that people can love him for who he is, not what he has. That is worth fighting for. She let me cry for a while, handed me tissues, waited until I could breathe normally again. Then she said, "Tell me what you are most afraid of." "That Michael will never forgive me," I said. "That I will lose my son trying to save him." Dr. Lynn nodded. That is a real risk. But consider the alternative. If you do nothing, and she marries him, and eventually destroys him, and he finds out years later that you knew and said nothing, would he forgive that? I had not thought of it that way. The sin of silence versus the sin of intervention. Both carried risks, but only one carried the possibility of prevention. Those words steadied me. I was not being cruel. I was being a surgeon, cutting out a cancer before it metastasized. Rita's final report arrived on day 12. 3 more men, all brief relationships, 1 to 3 months each. All ended when Vanessa realized they did not have enough money to be worth her time. One was a teacher, one was a social worker, one was a graduate student. All good men with modest incomes who had been discarded when they failed to meet her financial requirements. One of them, the teacher, had written about the experience on a dating forum, warning others. She seemed perfect at first, interested, engaged, affectionate. Then I mentioned my student loans and how I was saving to buy a small condo. After that, she became distant, stopped returning texts. When I asked what changed, she said she just did not see a future. Later, I found out she had been asking my friends about my finances, whether I had family money. It felt violating. Reading his account broke my heart. This decent man, working a difficult job for modest pay, had been evaluated and discarded like a defective product. Vanessa had not even bothered with a gentle letdown. She had simply ghosted him once she confirmed he was financially unsuitable. Every piece of evidence confirmed the pattern. Vanessa was not unlucky in love. She was a hunter, and my son was her prey. I documented everything, created a binder with color-coded tabs, financial history, prior relationships, written admission, that section containing photographs of her diary, pattern of deception, employment fraud. I was methodical, clinical. The same way I had approached difficult diagnoses when a child's life depended on getting it exactly right. I spent hours organizing the evidence, making sure every claim was backed by documentation, every assertion supported by facts. I created a timeline showing Vanessa's movements from Boston to Philadelphia, her engagement history, her pattern of financial extraction. I highlighted the similarities between what she had done to David and Marcus and what she was attempting with Michael. The progression was undeniable, but evidence was not enough. I needed Michael to see it, really see it. Not through the filter of love, but through the lens of reality. And I needed to protect myself from the accusation I knew was coming, that I was a jealous mother who could not let go, who was sabotaging my son's happiness. So I did something I had never done before. I rehearsed. stood in front of my bathroom mirror and practiced the conversation I would have with Michael. Practiced staying calm when he defended her. Practiced responding to the accusations I knew she would make. Practiced keeping my voice steady when everything in me wanted to scream. Your mother is lying. Your mother is manipulating you. Your mother wants to control your life. I prepared responses. Evidence-based, unemotional. I have hired an investigator. Here are the findings. Here is documentation. I am not asking you to take my word. I am asking you to look at facts. Over and over until I could deliver the words without my voice shaking. I practiced in the mirror, watching my face, monitoring my tone. I recorded myself on my phone and played it back, listening for any hint of hysteria or emotion that could be used against me. I needed to sound rational, concerned, factual, not angry or jealous or controlling. Just a mother presenting information and asking her son to consider it. I was ready. But Vanessa moved first. She called me on a Thursday afternoon. My phone rang while I was reviewing Rita's final report for the third time, memorizing details. Her voice was wounded, confused. We need to talk. Can I come over? My heart rate spiked. She knew something. But what? How much? Of course, I said. I am home now. She arrived 20 minutes later. I watched from the window as she parked her car, a BMW sedan that Michael had helped her lease. Watched her check her reflection in the side mirror, adjust her hair. Watched her take a deep breath before walking to my door. Performance preparation. She was getting into character. I studied her approach the way I used to study patients entering my exam room. The body language, the facial expressions, the tells that revealed truth beneath performance. Vanessa's shoulders were tight, her jaw set. She was preparing for confrontation, which meant she knew I knew something. But how? I let her in, offered tea, which she declined. We sat in my living room, afternoon light making everything seem ordinary, normal, safe. Then she said, I thought we had a relationship built on trust. Her eyes were glossy with tears. Her voice trembled just enough to seem genuine. She was good. Very good. Why would you investigate me like I am some kind of criminal? Like I am some threat to your family? I felt my pulse hammering in my throat. She knew about Rita. But how? Rita had been discreet, had used only legal methods, public records, database searches, had left no obvious trail. Unless Vanessa was monitoring something, unless she had alerts set up on her name, unless she was more sophisticated than even Rita had anticipated. That is exactly what she did, Rita had warned me when I called her immediately after Vanessa's call. Professional fraudsters often set up Google alerts on their names, monitor credit reports for inquiries, pay for services that notify them of background checks. She probably got an alert the moment I started pulling records. I kept my face calm, neutral. Why would you keep a diary calculating how to divorce my son for his inheritance? I watched her process this, saw the micro-expressions flash across her face. Surprised that I had read it, calculation about how to respond. Then a decision. Her expression shifted to hurt, betrayed. That is fiction. I am working on a novel, a character study. You had no right to read my private writing. It was a good cover story, plausible, the kind of explanation that would make me look paranoid if I pushed back. So I did not push back. I simply said, then I am sure you will not mind explaining it to a mediator. Silence. 3 full seconds. Her face went very still. A mediator? This is insane. Michael will never agree to this. Her voice had changed. The wounded confusion was gone. This was sharper, colder. You are trying to destroy what we have because you cannot stand to lose control of him. I stood up, opened my laptop on the coffee table, turned it so she could see the screen. Rita's report, all 47 pages, open to the section on David Rothenberg, the credit card fraud, the settlement agreement. I watched the blood drain from her face. I have everything, I said quietly. 2 prior engagements, financial fraud, a business that does not exist, emails to friends describing your retirement plan, and yes, your diary, all documented, all verifiable. She stared at the screen. I could see her mind racing, trying to find an angle, an explanation, a way out. Her eyes darted across the text, reading the documentation. I saw the exact moment she realized how thoroughly she had been exposed. Her breathing changed, became shallower. Her hands, which had been resting calmly in her lap, clenched into fists. Then her expression hardened. Fine. You want a war? You will regret this. Michael loves me. He will choose me. And when he does, you will have destroyed your relationship with your son over paranoid fantasies. She stood, grabbed her purse, headed for the door. I called after her. The mediator's name is Philip Okoye. We meet next Thursday. Michael has already agreed. She stopped, turned, stared at me. You are lying. I picked up my phone, showed her the text exchange with Michael from that morning. The exchange where I had finally shown him the diary, and Rita's report, and the timeline of her questions about money, and the credit report showing she had already tried opening an account at Wawa using his information, just testing, seeing if she could. Showed her his response. I need to understand this. Set up the mediation. I will be there. Vanessa's face went white, then red, then white again. You manipulated him, she hissed. You twisted everything. He will see through this. But her voice was shaking now. The mask was cracking. Because she knew that Michael had seen the evidence, knew that love is powerful but documentation is stronger, knew that her plan was collapsing. She left without another word. I heard her car engine start, heard tires squeal as she accelerated away from my house. I sat down on the couch. My hands were shaking. My heart was racing. But underneath the adrenaline, there was something else. Relief. Because I had been right. And now Michael knew I was right, and we were going to end this. The next 5 days were agony. Michael moved back home temporarily. He did not want to be alone in the apartment he shared with Vanessa. Did not want to face her constant calls, her texts, her attempts to explain. He arrived with 3 suitcases and a devastated expression. I helped him carry his things to his old room, the room he had lived in through high school and college. Nothing had changed. His old desk, his bookshelves, the vintage Phillies poster he had insisted on keeping even when Thomas had offered to repaint. It was a time capsule, and walking into it seemed to make Michael feel even younger, more vulnerable. We did not talk about it much those first few days. He was grieving. Not for who Vanessa actually was, but for who he had believed her to be. For the future he had imagined. For his own judgment that had been so thoroughly manipulated. I gave him space, made him meals he barely touched, sat with him in silence when he needed company. On the second day, I made his favorite meal from childhood. Chicken parmesan with homemade marinara, the recipe Thomas's mother had taught me. Michael came to the table, stared at the food, and started crying. I am sorry, he said. I am so sorry I did not see it. I reached across the table, took his hand. You have nothing to apologize for. She was skilled. She had practice. This is not your fault. But I should have known, he said. All the signs were there. The questions about money. The way she never wanted to talk about her past. How she pushed for the expensive wedding. I ignored it all because I wanted to be in love. That is what she counted on, I told him. That is what predators do. They exploit our best qualities, our capacity for trust and love. Being deceived does not make you stupid. It makes you human. My sister flew in from Pittsburgh. My friend from Maine called every evening. Dr. Lynn squeezed in 2 emergency sessions. I needed my support network because the weight of what I had done was crushing. I had saved my son. but I had also taken a sledgehammer to his heart. Ellen arrived on day 3, took one look at Michael's face, and understood the magnitude of what had happened. She hugged him for a long time, did not ask questions, just held him while he cried. Later in the kitchen, she said to me, "You did the right thing. I know it does not feel like it right now, but you did." "I hope so," I said, "because right now it feels like I destroyed him." "You prevented someone else from destroying him," Ellen corrected. "There is a difference." On Tuesday, 2 days before the mediation, Vanessa's calls to Michael intensified. She called 14 times in one day, left voicemails, sent texts, each one more desperate than the last. Michael's phone buzzed constantly. He had stopped answering after the first few calls, but we could see the notifications piling up. The voicemail indicator kept climbing. At one point, his phone rang 5 times in 10 minutes. Michael asked me, should I answer? Should I hear her out? I thought carefully before responding. This was not my decision to make. He was 31 years old, an adult, capable of making his own choices. "Pennsylvania is a one-party consent state," I said. "If you take her calls, you can legally record them, and whatever she says might help clarify things." He nodded. That evening, he started recording. The first voicemail was apologetic. "Baby, I know the diary looks bad, but I can explain everything. Please just talk to me. Let me explain." The second was wounded. "I cannot believe you are doing this, after everything we have been to each other. Your mother is poisoning you against me. Can you not see what she is doing?" By the fifth, the desperation was palpable. "You are really going to throw away what we have because your mother twisted some words in a notebook? This is insane. We are supposed to get married in 4 months. We sent out save the dates. What am I supposed to tell people?" Michael listened to each one with a stricken expression. I sat beside him on the couch, not speaking, just being present. Each voicemail revealed another layer of Vanessa's strategy, the progression from apologetic to accusatory, from victim to aggressor. By the 11th, her mask had completely disintegrated. "Fine. But you will regret this. And when you come crawling back, it will cost you more than it would have if you had just married me like you promised. I gave up opportunities for you. I turned down other men who were interested. You owe me." Michael played me that last message. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where her diary had been, and I watched my son's face as he listened to the woman he loved reveal her true nature. "She was never interested in me at all, was she?" he said quietly. "I was just a bank account." I reached across the table, took his hand. "You are brilliant, kind, accomplished, and worthy of real love. She saw those qualities and tried to exploit them. That says everything about her and nothing about you." He nodded, but I could see he did not believe it yet, would not believe it for a long time. Thursday arrived. The mediation was scheduled for 2 in the afternoon at Philip Okoye's office in Old City. I dressed carefully. Navy suit, minimal jewelry, hair pulled back. I wanted to look professional, credible, someone whose concerns should be taken seriously. Michael wore a suit as well. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, the weight he had lost in 5 days visible in his face. We drove to the office in silence, parked in a garage 2 blocks away, walked through streets I had known for 30 years, and felt like I was walking to an execution. The spring day was beautiful. Cherry blossoms were blooming in the small parks we passed. Couples sat at outdoor cafes, enjoying the weather. The normalcy of it all felt surreal against what we were about to do. Philip Okoye's office was in a renovated brick building near the waterfront. Modern, corporate, deliberately neutral. We took the elevator to the 3rd floor. Were greeted by a receptionist who led us to a conference room. Large windows overlooking the Delaware River. A table that seated 8. Recording equipment set up at the head of the table. 3 water pitchers, glasses, notepads. Philip arrived a few minutes later. He was in his late 50s, silver-haired, calm presence, shook our hands, explained the process. Each side would present their position. We would review evidence. He would issue a recommendation. Not legally binding for the relationship, but Michael had agreed he would follow Philip's assessment. Then we waited. Vanessa arrived at exactly 2. She had brought an attorney. Young, aggressive-looking, expensive suit. They must have cost her a substantial retainer, money she did not have, which meant she had found it somewhere. Another man? Credit cards? A loan? She did not look at Michael or me. Sat on the opposite side of the table with her attorney, hands folded, expression neutral. Philip began. We are here to address concerns Mrs. Brennan has raised about Ms. Cole's intentions regarding her relationship with Michael Brennan. Mrs. Brennan has provided substantial documentation that I have reviewed. Ms. Cole has requested the opportunity to respond. We will hear from both sides, review evidence, and I will provide my professional assessment. Vanessa's attorney went first. His name was Derek Morrison, and he came out swinging. My client is the victim of a campaign of harassment by a controlling mother who cannot accept that her son has found happiness. Mrs. Brennan hired a private investigator to dig into Ms. Cole's past, violated her privacy by reading her personal diary, and has manufactured a case against an innocent woman based on misinterpretations and creative writing. He painted me as obsessed, possessive, jealous, unable to release my son, the kind of mother who would destroy her son's chance at love rather than share him with another woman. The diary is creative writing. Ms. Cole is working on a manuscript exploring a character unlike herself. That is what writers do. They create fictional scenarios, often dark or morally complex, to explore human nature. Mrs. Brennan read private material without permission and misconstrued fiction as confession. He was good. If I had not had Rita's evidence, I might have doubted myself. Then it was my turn. I did not argue, did not defend my actions or explain my motivations. I simply presented the evidence. Rita's investigation, the 2 prior engagements, both broken for financial deception. David Rothenberg's settlement agreement, right there in black and white, $50,000 paid to make Vanessa disappear after she committed credit card fraud. Marcus Hyland's emails, found on his computer, where Vanessa had outlined her plan to marry him, wait out a year or 2, then divorce with maximum financial gain. The fake business. Vanessa Cole Consulting. No clients, no revenue, registered solely to create an appearance of professional success. The credit report showing she had attempted to open an account at Wawa using Michael's information 2 weeks ago. Just testing the waters, seeing if she could. I presented it all calmly, methodically, letting the evidence speak. Then I played the recordings. Michael had transferred them to a flash drive. Philip loaded them onto his computer, played them through the conference room speakers. Vanessa's voice filled the room, first apologetic, then desperate, then angry, then revealing. By the 11th recording, her true nature was undeniable. And when you come crawling back, it will cost you more than it would have if you had just married me like you promised. I gave up opportunities for you. I turned down other men who were interested. You owe me. The room was silent as the recordings played. Michael stared at the table, jaw clenched. Vanessa sat frozen. Her careful composure finally cracked. Her attorney looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. When the last recording finished, Philip turned to Vanessa. Do you have a response? Her attorney started to speak, but she cut him off. Her voice was tight, controlled. Those recordings were taken without my knowledge. They are inadmissible. Pennsylvania is a one-party consent state, Philip said calmly. Michael had every legal right to record his own phone calls. Vanessa's composure shattered. This is a witch hunt. You have all decided I am guilty, and nothing I say will change that. Philip looked at her steadily. I have mediated 127 premarital disputes in my career. I approach every case with neutrality. But the evidence here is overwhelming. You have a documented history of targeting wealthy men, attempting financial fraud, and ending relationships when your plans are discovered. Your own words in recordings and in your diary demonstrate clear intent to defraud. He turned to Michael. I strongly recommend you terminate this relationship immediately and consider whether criminal charges are appropriate for the credit fraud. Then Philip said something I had not expected. I am also recommending this case to the Philadelphia Bar Association's Family Law Journal. The pattern here: serial engagement to wealthy targets, interstate movement after exposure, sophisticated financial probing disguised as relationship intimacy, represents an evolving threat. Your documentation may help other families recognize these patterns earlier. My case was going to help people I would never meet. Mothers who would feel that same instinct that something was wrong. Sons and daughters who would be spared what Michael had endured. Vanessa's composure shattered completely. You cannot publish anything about me. I will sue for defamation. Published anonymously, Philip said calmly. But your methods will be exposed. Other families will know what to look for. I watched Vanessa absorb this, watched her realize that not only had she lost Michael and his money, but her technique, her carefully refined system, was about to be exposed to the legal community. Her face went through a series of expressions: shock, rage, calculation, then something like despair. She stood abruptly. I am done here. Her attorney tried to stop her. Vanessa, we should discuss settlement terms. She ignored him, walked to the door, then turned back to look at me. Pure hatred in her eyes, not because I had caught her, not because her plan had failed, but because I had refused to be the easy mark she had expected, because I had fought back, because I had won. You will never see me as anything but a monster, she said, but I was going to make your son happy. I was going to be a good wife. For 2 years, I said quietly. Until the divorce, maximum. She flinched, then left. Her attorney gathered his materials and followed, apologizing to Philip as he went. The door closed. Silence filled the room. Philip looked at Michael and me. I will prepare formal documentation of my findings, but my assessment is clear. This relationship should end immediately. Ms. Cole poses a financial and emotional threat. She should return all gifts, sign a statement admitting the attempted fraud, and agree to no further contact. If she refuses, I recommend filing criminal charges. Michael sat very still for a long moment. Then he said quietly, I want to file charges. Philip nodded. I can refer you to someone in the district attorney's office who specializes in financial fraud. With this level of documentation, they will take it seriously. Michael looked at me. Is that vindictive? Am I being cruel? You are protecting the next person, I told him. If there are legal consequences, maybe she will stop. Michael drove to retrieve his belongings from their shared apartment that afternoon. He needed to get his things while Vanessa was not there. I offered to go with him, but he said no. This was something he needed to do alone. I waited at home, paced my kitchen, made tea I did not drink, stood at the window watching for his car. He returned 2 hours later, carrying boxes, looking shell-shocked. She was there, he said. I thought she would be gone, but she was waiting. My heart sank. What happened? She cried, he said. Begged me to give her another chance, said she loved me, that she had made mistakes but could change. I waited. Then she saw I was serious, that I was really ending it, and she said? He paused. She said I was making the biggest mistake of my life, that no one would ever love me like she did, that I was choosing my overbearing mother over the woman I claimed to love. That must have hurt, I said quietly. He shook his head. It did not, because by then I knew. She was still performing, still trying to manipulate. There was not a single moment where she apologized for the diary, for the fraud attempts, for the lies. Just self-pity and accusations. He looked at me. You saved me. I did not want to believe it. Wanted to think you were wrong, that there was some explanation. But you were right. And I almost married her. He set down the boxes and hugged me, held on tight. Thank you for being willing to be hated. Thank you for loving me enough to risk losing me. I held my son and cried. All the tension, all the fear, all the weight of the past 2 weeks finally releasing. The following week, under the terms Michael agreed to drop potential criminal charges, Vanessa returned everything. The jewelry he had given her, $31,000 worth. The car down payment, $8,000. The engagement ring, a 2-carat diamond that had cost him $15,000. She was required to sign a statement admitting the fraud attempts, which was filed with the Philadelphia Police Department's Fraud Division. If she ever contacted Michael or me again, criminal charges would be filed immediately. I watched her sign the documents in Philip's office. Her hand shook with rage, not remorse. She looked at me once, and I saw that same pure hatred. Not because I had caught her, but because I had refused to be easy. She left Philadelphia 2 weeks later. Rita tracked her through database searches. She moved to Baltimore, started over. New city, new hunting grounds. I thought about reporting her to authorities there, warning them. But Philip said there was nothing to charge her with beyond what we had already documented. She had not succeeded in Philadelphia, had returned everything, had signed admissions of wrongdoing. All we could do was hope the journal article would reach enough people to prevent future victims. Michael canceled the Union League wedding, lost the $12,000 deposit, canceled the save-the-date cards that had already been sent, called his groomsmen to explain, endured the awkward conversations, the pity, the questions. He moved back home temporarily. We did not talk about it much those first few weeks. He was processing, healing, rebuilding his sense of himself. But one morning, about 3 weeks after the mediation, he came into the kitchen while I was making coffee, stood in the doorway looking uncertain. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for loving me enough to be the bad guy." I set down my coffee cup, crossed to him, hugged my son the way I had when he was small and the world hurt him. "You are never going to be easy to manage," I told him. "You are too smart, too kind, and too valuable. Do not ever let someone convince you that being loving means being blind." The weight I had carried, the fear that I was destroying my relationship with my son, that I was wrong, that I was the villain, finally lifted. Michael was free. Not just free from Vanessa, but free to move forward with his judgment intact. Free to trust himself again. Because now he knew what real protection looked like. Over the following months, Michael slowly returned to himself. Started dating again, cautiously. Learned to spot the red flags, the too quick intimacy, the questions about finances disguised as interest, the ways people probed for information about assets. He developed better boundaries, learned that trust should be earned gradually, not given freely. That love does not mean ignoring evidence. 6 months after the mediation, Michael met someone new. Her name was Angela Martinez. She was a second-grade teacher at a public school in West Philadelphia. They met at a community garden project, both volunteering on a Saturday morning. She was different from Vanessa in every way. Practical clothes instead of designer labels. Genuine laugh instead of calculated charm. She split every check with Michael carefully, almost stubbornly. Paid her own way. Insisted on it. 3 months into dating, Michael told her about the Rittenhouse Square house, about his inheritance, about what had happened with Vanessa. Angela had been quiet for a long moment, then said, "That is your mom's home. Why would I care about that?" Michael called me that evening, said he thought he might have met someone real this time. Someone who saw him, not his balance sheet. I met Angela for the first time on a Sunday afternoon. She arrived with homemade cookies, chocolate chip, slightly burned on the bottom. Apologized for them with genuine embarrassment. I am terrible at baking but wanted to bring something. I loved her immediately. We sat in my garden, Michael and Angela and I, drinking iced tea and talking about nothing important. Her students, the community garden, the new exhibit at the Philadelphia Museum of Art. She did not ask about my finances, did not mention the house, did not probe for information. Instead, she told me about her family in Reading, her parents who had immigrated from Puerto Rico, her younger brother in college. Asked about my work, genuinely interested in pediatric medicine, in what had drawn me to that field. She asked about Thomas too, which surprised me. Not about his work or his assets, but about him as a person. What was he like? What made you fall in love with him? The questions were tender, curious, respectful of my grief. I found myself telling her stories I had not shared in years. How Thomas and I had met at a community theater production, both of us terrible actors but enthusiastic participants. How he had proposed in this very garden, getting down on one knee in the mud because he could not wait for me to finish planting tomatoes. How he had made me laugh even during the worst days of his illness. Angela listened with tears in her eyes. "He sounds like he was wonderful," she said. "Michael is a lot like him, is he not? That same kindness. She was real, transparent, no performance, no calculation, no hidden agenda. After she left, Michael stayed behind, helped me clean up the tea glasses, carry things inside. She is wonderful," I told him. "I know," he said. "And I know it because of what happened with Vanessa. I know how to tell the difference now." Angela has never asked about money, never tried to impress me. She shows up as exactly who she is, burnt cookies and all. He smiled. "I think I am going to marry her someday. If she will have me?" "She will," I said. "I am planning their engagement party now. Small, intimate gathering in my garden. Just family and close friends. No union league, no extravagant displays. Just people who love Michael and Angela for who they are. Angela is helping me plan it. Insists on contributing financially, even though I have told her repeatedly it is not necessary. She is stubborn about paying her own way. It is one of the things I love most about her. The party is in 3 weeks. Spring flowers in bloom, string lights in the trees, simple food that Angela and I will cook together. She has already warned me that her contribution might involve slightly burnt desserts. I told her I was counting on it. Vanessa's diary is still in my safe, filed with all the evidence. I keep it there not as a trophy, but as a reminder that sometimes the cruelest words lead to the kindest actions. That love without discernment is just vulnerability waiting to be exploited. That protecting the people you love is not about being nice. It is about being willing to see the truth, even when the truth shatters everything. Michael is whole again, wary but not cynical, careful but not closed off. He learned the hardest lesson, that some people will see his kindness as weakness, his generosity as opportunity. But he also learned that there are people like Angela who see him clearly and love what they see. I learned something too. That being a mother sometimes means being hated, means making decisions that feel monstrous in the moment, but are necessary for survival, means trusting your instincts even when everyone else is dazzled by the performance. I saved my son, and yes, it cost him something. Cost him his faith in his own judgment, his ability to trust easily, his innocence about how cruel people can be. But it gave him something more valuable. The ability to discern real from false, to protect himself, to recognize red flags before they become catastrophes. I look at him now, laughing with Angela in my garden, and I see a man who has been tested and emerged stronger. Who knows the difference between performance and authenticity? Who will never be easy to manage because he finally understands his own worth. And I know I did the right thing. Even if it meant reading someone's diary, even if it meant hiring an investigator, even if it meant becoming the villain in someone else's story, because sometimes love looks like surveillance, sometimes protection looks like invasion, sometimes saving someone means they have to first believe you are destroying them. I am not sorry. I would do it again. I would read that diary 100 times, hire 100 investigators, sit through 100 mediations, because my son is free. And that is worth everything. There is a moment that stays with me. The morning after the mediation, I found Michael sitting at the kitchen table with the binder of evidence, reading through it page by page, really absorbing what he had escaped. He looked up when I came in. "How did you know?" he asked. "What made you read the diary?" I poured coffee, sat across from him. "I have been a doctor for 24 years. I learned to recognize when something is wrong, even when all the obvious signs point to health. Sometimes it is just a feeling, an instinct, a small inconsistency that nags at you." "What inconsistency?" he asked. "Her questions," I said. She asked about money in ways that seemed natural in the moment, but in retrospect formed a pattern. And there was something else. She never asked about you. Never wanted to know about your childhood, your dreams, what shaped you. She asked about assets, inheritance, property. She was interested in your financial history, but not your emotional one. Michael was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I loved her. I really did. Or I loved who I thought she was. Does that make me stupid?" "It makes you human," I told him. "And it makes you kind. Those are not weaknesses. They are gifts. Vanessa exploited them, but Angela will cherish them." He nodded, closed the binder, said he was ready to put it away, to stop reliving it and start moving forward. But he kept one thing, a single page from Rita's report, the quote from the teacher who had warned others about Vanessa on the dating forum. Michael framed it, hung it in his home office. A reminder, it reads, "Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, investigate before you commit. Love is not blind. Love is choosing to see someone clearly and accepting what you find. If you have to ignore red flags to maintain the fantasy, it is not love. It is delusion." Words Michael needed to see every day as he rebuilt. I think about Vanessa sometimes. Wonder if she ever reflects on what she lost. Not the money. She never really lost money because she never actually had it. But the potential for something real. Michael would have been a devoted husband to someone who actually loved him. Would have built a life of genuine partnership. She threw that away because she could not see past dollar signs. Sometimes, in quieter moments, I wonder what made her this way. What happened in her life that turned relationships into transactions, people into profit margins? Did someone hurt her so badly that she decided to strike first, to take before she could be taken from? Or was it simply greed, pure and uncomplicated, that drove her to see every human connection as an opportunity for extraction? I will never know, and perhaps it does not matter. Understanding her motivations would not change what she did, would not erase the calculation in her diary, the fraud attempts, the cold assessment of my son as manageable. But I think about it sometimes, about the woman she could have been if she had chosen differently, if she had valued authenticity over affluence, if she had looked for love instead of liquidatable assets. I wonder if she knows that she destroyed her own chance at happiness, that her obsession with wealth kept her from ever experiencing real love, that she will spend her life performing, calculating, hunting, and never find what she is really searching for. Because what she is searching for cannot be stolen. It can only be earned, and she has never learned how. The saddest part is that she probably does not even realize what she is missing. To her, what Angela and Michael have, genuine affection, mutual respect, authentic partnership, would seem naive, foolish, a weakness to be exploited rather than a strength to be cherished. She will move through life collecting settlements and broken engagements, telling herself she is winning, that she is smarter than the people she deceives, that material gain equals success, and she will die having never known what it means to be truly loved, to be seen completely and accepted wholly, to build something lasting with another person. That is her real punishment, not the exposure, not the journal article, not even the legal consequences, but the lifetime of emptiness she has chosen for herself. The isolation that comes from treating every relationship as a con. But mostly, I do not think about Vanessa at all. She is a cautionary tale, a near miss, a bullet Michael dodged because his mother was willing to be hated for a while. Instead, I think about Angela, about the engagement party in my garden, about future grandchildren who will run through this house and never know how close their father came to marrying someone who would have destroyed him. I think about Michael, whole and healed, smiling again. And I think about the journal article that Philip published. Anonymous case study, no names, just patterns and red flags. I have heard from 3 mothers since it came out. 3 women who recognized similar patterns in their children's relationships. Who caught the predator early because they knew what to look for. 3 families saved because I was willing to read a diary that was not mine. Was it an invasion of privacy? Yes. Was it morally questionable? Absolutely. Would I do it again? Without hesitation. Because sometimes being a good mother means being a bad person, means violating boundaries, ignoring social niceties, trusting your gut even when everyone thinks you are paranoid. Sometimes it means reading a diary left open on your kitchen table and deciding that yes, you are going to war. I have no regrets. My son is free. My future daughter-in-law is genuine. And I sleep soundly at night, knowing I did what needed to be done. That diary still sits in my safe. I will keep it there until I die. A reminder that the cruelest words sometimes save lives. That small acts of violation can prevent massive destruction. That loving someone sometimes means they have to hate you first. Michael is planning to propose to Angela next month. He has asked me to help him plan it. Something simple, he said. Something real. No grand gestures or expensive displays. Just him and her and a question. We have been working on the details together. He wants to propose in the community garden where they met, during the morning hours when the light is soft and golden. He has already spoken to Angela's parents, asked for their blessing in the traditional way that matters to their family. They welcomed him with open arms, invited him to Sunday dinners, treated him like a son before he even asked the question. The contrast to Vanessa is striking. With her, everything was performance. With Angela's family, everything is genuine. Her mother hugs Michael every time she sees him. Her father talks to him about baseball and politics. Her brother asks him for career advice. They see him as a person, not a portfolio. Michael showed me the ring he chose. Not the biggest diamond, not the most expensive setting, but thoughtfully selected. A sapphire, because Angela mentioned once that she loved the deep blue color. Set in a simple gold band that she can wear while teaching, while gardening, while living her life. It is perfect for her, for them. I am so proud of him, of his ability to start again, to choose wisely, to recognize authenticity when he finds it. When he told me about his proposal plans, he said something that broke my heart and mended it at the same time. I am nervous, he admitted. Not because I doubt she will say yes, but because this feels so different from before. With Vanessa, I was performing too, trying to be the man I thought she wanted. With Angela, I am just myself, and that is somehow more vulnerable. That vulnerability is what tells me he is ready, that he has learned, that he will be okay. And I am grateful. That my instincts were right. That I acted despite my fear. That I was willing to be the villain so my son could find his happy ending. I am grateful for Rita, for her thorough work and professional discretion. For my sister Ellen, who flew across the state to support me when I doubted myself. For Dr. Lynn, who helped me process the guilt and fear. For Margaret, who reminded me to trust my diagnostic instincts even outside of medicine. For Philip, who took my case seriously and created documentation that may save other families. I am even grateful, in a strange way, for Vanessa. For being careless enough to leave that diary open. For being arrogant enough to think she could deceive us without consequence. for being just bad enough at her own game that we caught her before she succeeded. If she had been better at this, more careful, more patient, she might have married Michael. Might have spent 2 years destroying him from the inside out. Might have taken millions and left him broken. Instead, she overplayed her hand, and in doing so, she freed him to find something real. The diary is closed now, locked away. Its job is done. Sometimes I take it out and read it again. Not often. Just when I need to remember that my instincts were right, that the uncomfortable feeling in my gut was not paranoia or jealousy, but recognition of danger. That trusting that feeling saved my son's life, even if he did not know his life needed saving. The words still make me angry. Michael is easy enough to manage. The cold calculation, the complete absence of love or even basic human decency. But now I read them with a kind of clinical detachment. They are evidence of a pathology, symptoms of a sickness that destroys people from the inside out. I keep the diary because I never want to forget what is possible. That there are people in the world who will smile and charm and perform affection while calculating how to extract maximum value from your trust. That love can be faked convincingly enough to fool good, intelligent, careful people. That vigilance is not paranoia. It is survival. I keep it because someday, if I have grandchildren, they may need to understand this lesson too. That not everyone who seems kind is kind. That beautiful packages sometimes contain poison. That protecting yourself and the people you love requires looking past surface charm to see the calculation beneath. But its lessons remain. Trust your instincts. Protect the people you love. And sometimes, being kind means being willing to be cruel. I have learned to live with the moral complexity of what I did. I violated Vanessa's privacy. I investigated her without her knowledge or consent. I intervened in my adult son's relationship in ways that many would consider controlling or inappropriate. And I would do it all again, without hesitation, without regret. Because the alternative was watching my son marry someone who was actively planning to destroy him. The alternative was standing by while he signed away his future, his assets, his ability to trust. The alternative was silence, and silence would have been complicity. I am at peace with that, with all of it, with the choices I made, the lines I crossed, the war I waged. I am at peace with being the kind of mother who reads diaries and hires investigators, who confronts con artists and demands mediations, who refuses to be polite when her child is in danger. I am at peace with the knowledge that love sometimes requires actions that look nothing like the greeting card version of motherhood, that protection sometimes means intervention, that saving someone sometimes means they have to hate you first, trust you later, and thank you eventually. Because my son is free. And that makes me the hero of this story, even if I had to be the villain to do it. Not the hero in the traditional sense. I did not slay dragons or storm castles. I read a diary that was not mine and hired someone to dig through another person's past. I manipulated a confrontation and forced a mediation. I did things that made me deeply uncomfortable, that violated my own sense of proper boundaries and respectful distance. But I saved my son. And in the calculus of motherhood, that is the only metric that matters. There is one more thing I need to say, one more truth that needs to be spoken. If you are reading this and something feels wrong in your gut about someone in your life or your child's life, trust that feeling. Do not dismiss it as paranoia. Do not talk yourself out of it because everyone else seems charmed. Do not ignore red flags because you want to believe the best in people. Your instincts exist for a reason. They are the accumulated wisdom of thousands of years of human evolution, the part of your brain that recognizes patterns and identifies threats before your conscious mind can articulate why. When someone asks too many questions about money, that is a red flag. When someone's past is conveniently vague or unverifiable, that is a red flag. When someone pushes for expensive gestures funded by others, that is a red flag. When someone seems more interested in your assets than your history, That is a red flag. Pay attention to those flags. Investigate before you dismiss your concerns. Protect the people you love even when it makes you uncomfortable. Be willing to be wrong, but also be willing to be right. Because the cost of ignoring your instincts is so much higher than the cost of acting on them. If you investigate and find nothing, you lose some money and maybe some trust. But if you ignore your instincts and you are right, you lose everything. I almost lost my son, not to death, but to something that would have killed the best parts of him. His ability to trust, his belief in his own judgment, his capacity for genuine love. I saved him by being willing to be hated, by crossing lines I never thought I would cross, by fighting a war I never wanted to wage, and I would do it again, 1,000 times over, because that is what love requires sometimes. Not pretty words or gentle support, but fierce protection, uncomfortable intervention, willingness to be the villain so the people you love can be safe. If this story resonates with you, if you recognize patterns you have seen in your own life or the lives of people you love, I hope it gives you permission to act, to trust yourself, to protect the people who matter most. Do not wait for perfect proof. Do not wait until the damage is done. Trust your gut, gather your evidence, and fight for the people you love. Because sometimes, a diary left open on a kitchen table is not carelessness. It is a gift, a warning, a chance to save someone before they need saving. Take it. Like this story if it resonated with you. Comment below and let me know where you are watching from and what time it is there right now. Make sure you are subscribed so you do not miss what is coming next, because the story on your screen right now might be even more intense than what you just heard. Click it. You will not regret it.